The mating ceremony was meant to crown Selina's fate, not destroy it. But one look at the silent visitor in the back of the arena was enough to rip the ground out from under her. Her wolf lunged toward the stranger, and she collapsed straight into his arms. Now she's waking in the Alpha King's bed, and the outsider who caught her has vanished. Something is terribly wrong. Every kingdom has its defining rituals, moments meant to reveal judgment, destiny, and unshakable order. In Mooncrest, the mating ceremony is exactly that, the moment a Luna's loyalty and a king's authority converge before the entire realm. No doubts. No deviations. No second choices. Selina, crowned Luna Queen barely 2 moons ago, is expected to stand beside Alpha King Cairo and complete the bond that will unify the 6 wolf territories. The arena is filled with elders, nobles, and warriors. Torches burn with the moon goddess's blessing. Drums echo the pulse of the kingdom itself. Everything is arranged perfectly, until something impossible happens. Amid the crowd, a tall, dark-haired visitor stands where no visitor should be. His eyes, silver-rimmed and ancient in a way that sends a shiver through Selina's soul, lock onto hers. Her wolf reacts violently, not with fear, but recognition. The drums fade. The world stops. Destiny bends. Selina's body collapses, overcome by a pull she has never felt before, not toward Cairo, not toward her duties, but toward him. The stranger. Rhys James. And that single impossible reaction sets off a chain of choices and consequences that will force Selina to confront everything she thought she knew about duty, destiny, and the price of being chosen. Now, to understand how the kingdom unraveled from one unexpected moment, we must step back into the heart of the ceremony and watch fate twist itself into knots. Selina's eyes opened to unfamiliar silk pressed against her cheek. The ceiling above her wasn't the rough stone of her quarters, but ornate plasterwork painted in gold leaf. She tried to sit up, and her head swam with a dizziness that had nothing to do with physical weakness. Easy. Cairo's voice came from too close. You've had quite a shock. She turned her head to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, his bed. She realized with a jolt, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Concern, perhaps. But there was something else beneath it, something that made her wolf bristle. What happened? Her voice came out hoarse. You fainted during the ceremony. Cairo reached for her hand, his touch cool and measured. The physician says it was stress. The bond ritual can be overwhelming for some. Overwhelming. The word felt wrong, too simple for the chaos that had erupted inside her the moment that stranger's eyes met hers. She remembered the way her wolf had surged forward, wild and desperate, howling a single word that still echoed through her bones. Mate. Not Cairo. The other one. Rhys. I don't remember fainting. Selina pulled her hand away, sitting up despite the protests of her body. I remember. The excitement of the crowd, the heat of the torches. Cairo stood, moving to a side table where a crystal decanter waited. He poured something amber into a glass. It's not uncommon. Tomorrow we'll try again, and this time you'll be prepared. But that wasn't what she remembered. She remembered red light where there should have been gold. She remembered a scent that wrapped around her like a promise, like coming home after years of wandering. She remembered her wolf recognizing someone, that should have been impossible. Who is that man? The question escaped before she could stop it. Cairo's hand stilled, the glass halfway to his lips. When he turned to face her, his smile was perfectly in place, but it didn't reach his eyes. What man? The one who, she stopped. How could she explain? The one who made my entire world tilt on its axis? The one who smelled like mine? The visitor in the crowd. Dark hair, leather jacket. He didn't belong. Cairo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. A vagrant, perhaps. An outsider drawn by the spectacle. My guards are handling it. Handling it. The casual dismissal made her wolf snarl inside her chest, clawing at her ribs as if she could tear through flesh and bone to reach. What? A stranger? Someone she'd looked at for all of 3 seconds? But those 3 seconds had felt more real than the entire month she'd spent at Cairo's side. I need to rest, she said, swinging her legs off the bed. In my own quarters. Selina. Cairo set down his glass with deliberate care. I think it would be better if you stayed here tonight. After such a shock to your system. I'm fine. She stood, gratified when her legs held steady. I just need some space. For a moment, something flickered across Cairo's face, something sharp and cold that vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. Then his expression softened into understanding, though it felt performed rather than genuine. Of course. But Selina, we need to discuss tomorrow. He crossed to her, and she had to force herself not to step back. The bond must be completed soon. For the stability of the pack. For your protection. My protection from what? From those who would take advantage of an incomplete bond. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and she felt nothing. No spark, no pull, no recognition. There are always those who wish to disrupt the natural order. Outsiders who don't understand our ways. Visitors who bring chaos in their wake. The word visitor carried weight, a warning wrapped in silk. Selina met his eyes and saw something she'd never noticed before, not just authority, but anxiety. Fear, even, buried beneath layers of carefully constructed calm. What are you afraid of? She asked quietly. The question seemed to catch him off guard. His hand dropped, and for the first time since she'd met him, Cairo looked almost vulnerable. Almost. I'm afraid of losing you, he said. The bond will ensure that doesn't happen. But as he said it, Selina's wolf growled a single, devastating truth. He's lying. She left his chambers without another word, her mind churning with questions that multiplied with each step. Why had the ceremonial torches turned red, a color that signified chaos, danger, a disruption in the sacred order? Why had this wreath smelled like everything she'd been searching for without knowing she was searching? And why was Cairo, the unshakable Alpha King, suddenly so desperate to complete their bond? The corridor outside was quieter than it should have been at this hour. Selina moved through the shadows, her wolf senses heightened, picking up fragments of conversation from around a distant corner. Found him yet? No, sir. He vanished into the forest. But we've got trackers. The king wants him found before dawn. Says he's dangerous. Dangerous? He looked half-starved. Just some drifter who stumbled into the wrong. You didn't see what I saw. The way she looked at him. The way the flames reacted. Selina pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. They were hunting him. Hunting Reese. What do we do if we find him? A pause, heavy with implication. The king didn't say bring him back alive. Selina's breath caught. She waited until the guard's footsteps faded, then made her way back to her quarters on trembling legs. Inside, she locked the door and leaned against it, her mind a whirlwind of impossible truths. She was meant to bond with Cairo tomorrow. Meant to become his Luna, to cement the alliance between their packs, to fulfill the destiny that had been planned since before she was born. But her wolf knew, with uncertainty that transcended logic, that her true mate was out there in the darkness. Running. Hunted. And if Cairo's guards found him first, she might never understand why the universe had brought them together for those 3 devastating seconds. The servant's cloak scratched against Selina's neck as she slipped through the kitchen courtyard, hood pulled low over her face. Dawn hadn't broken yet. Good. The palace guards changed shifts at sunrise, and she needed the cover of darkness for what came next. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless and hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food. Find him. The command pulsed through her veins like a second heartbeat. She'd tried to ignore it all night, pacing her chambers, pressing her palms against the cold stone walls, reciting the lunar texts until her voice went hoarse. Nothing worked. The pull remained, a fishhook lodged beneath her ribs, tugging her forward with increasing desperation. Selina moved through the eastern gate, where the old oak tree had split the wall decades ago. The guards never bothered watching this section anymore. They assumed their queen was still unconscious in her bed, attended by healers who murmured about exhaustion and wedding day nerves. If only it were that simple. The moment she crossed into the forest, her body exhaled. The tension that had been coiling tighter and tighter in her chest loosened slightly, and she knew. She was moving in the right direction. Toward him. The scent hit her first. pine and iron. Wood smoke and something darker, something that made her wolf surge forward so violently she stumbled against a tree trunk. No, this is impossible. But her body didn't care about impossible. It cared about the scent trail winding through the underbrush, about the broken branches and disturbed earth that told a story her mind refused to accept. Selina followed it deeper into the woods, her human logic warring with her wolf's certainty. A queen only bonded once. Everyone knew this. It was law, tradition, the fundamental truth upon which the entire pack structure rested. Hadrian was her mate. The elders had confirmed it. The moon goddess had blessed it. So why did every step away from this trail feel like someone was tearing her spine out through her skin? She pressed forward, ignoring the pain. The forest floor told its story in fragments, a partial boot print in the mud, too large to be a woman's. 3 sets of tracks converging from different directions. And then her breath caught blood on a cluster of leaves, dark and fresh enough to glisten in the pre-dawn light. Selina's fingers trembled as she touched the stained leaf. Her wolf howled inside her skull, a sound of pure anguish that had no place in a queen's carefully controlled mind. The flashback slammed into her without warning. The ceremony. The moment before everything shattered. She'd been standing at the altar, Hadrian's hand cool in hers, when the doors burst open. The stranger's eyes, dark, defiant, furious, locked onto hers across the crowded hall. And her wolf had recognized him. Not the polite acknowledgement of another pack member. Not even the heated awareness of attraction. This was recognition in its most primal form. The kind that rewrote reality, that burned through every careful plan and political alliance she'd spent years constructing. Warmth had flooded her body, starting in her chest and radiating outward until her fingertips tingled. The bond snapped into place like a bone setting after a break, painful and perfect and completely, utterly wrong. Because she already had a mate. Her wolf had tried to go to the stranger. Actually tried to shift, right there at the altar, in front of the entire pack and visiting dignitaries from 4 territories. Selina had locked her muscles, fighting her own body with every ounce of control she possessed. Asterisk. And then the pain hit like being torn in half, her wolf pulling toward the stranger while the existing bond with Hadrian held her back, 2 forces ripping her apart from the inside. She'd collapsed. Obviously. The human body wasn't meant to contain that kind of contradiction. The memory released her, and Selina found herself on her knees in the dirt, breathing hard. Her hands were fisted in the forest floor, and she could taste blood where she'd bitten her tongue. "Your Majesty." She went rigid. The voice came from behind her, calm and cold and utterly unsurprised. Selina rose slowly, turning to face the 3 figures emerging from the shadows between the trees. Elder Mara stood at the center, flanked by 2 palace guards who looked distinctly uncomfortable with whatever they'd just been ordered to do. "You shouldn't be out here," Elder Mara said. "Not a suggestion. A statement of fact. I'm the queen." Selina kept her voice level, despite the chaos still raging inside her chest. "I go where I please. Not tonight, you don't." Mara moved closer, and Selina saw something in the old woman's face that she'd never seen before. Not anger. Fear. "You're coming back to the palace. Now." The guards moved to flank her. Selina's wolf snarled, but she was still weak from the ceremony, still reeling from the double bond tearing through her system. She didn't resist as they took her arms, gently, respectfully, but firmly enough that she understood refusal wasn't an option. They walked in silence through the forest, back toward the palace walls that suddenly felt less like protection and more like a cage. Selina's body screamed with every step away from the blood trail, away from him, but she forced herself to keep moving. When they reached her private chambers, Mara dismissed the guards with a sharp gesture. The door closed behind them with a finality that made Selina's stomach drop. "Sit," Mara said. "I'll stand." The elder's mouth thinned, but she didn't argue. Instead, she moved to the window, staring out at the forest they'd just left behind. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made the air feel heavy. "A queen can only have one mate." "I know that," Selina said through gritted teeth. Do you? Mara turned to face her. Because your body seems to have missed that particular lesson. Heat flooded Selina's face. What happened at the ceremony was recognition. Mara's eyes were hard. A second mate bond. Which should be impossible. The word hung between them. Impossible. The texts call it a curse, Mara continued. A punishment from the moon goddess for some great sin in a past life. Or, she paused, and something flickered across her face. A threat. A threat to what? To everything. The pack structure. The royal line. The balance of power that's kept us safe for centuries. Mara stepped closer, and Selina saw the fear more clearly now, etched into every line of the elder's face. A queen with two mate bonds is a queen divided. Unstable. Dangerous. The ceremony collapse was not weakness. Selina understood that now, with sudden, terrible clarity. Her body hadn't failed her. It had been trying to tell her the truth, that something fundamental had shifted, that the careful order of her world had shattered the moment that stranger's eyes met hers across the hall. Where is he? The question tore out of her before she could stop it. Mara's expression hardened. That's not your concern. Where is he? Selina took a step forward, and this time her wolf surged with her, lending strength to her voice. The windows rattled. The candles flickered. Tell me where he is, or I swear by the moon goddess I will tear this palace apart stone by stone until I find him. You can't. Where is he? The shout echoed through the chamber, through the halls beyond, carrying with it all the rage and confusion and desperate, clawing need that had been building since the moment she opened her eyes and found him gone. Elder Mara stared at her, and Selina saw her own impossible situation reflected in the old woman's eyes, a queen bound by law and tradition, standing face to face with a truth that shouldn't exist. Your Majesty, Mara said quietly, you're not going to like the answer. They dragged him into the council chamber at midnight, when the moon hung full and accusatory in the sky. Selina stood behind the carved wooden screen that separated the queen's gallery from the main floor, a concession Elder Mara had granted only after Selina threatened to invoke her royal right to attend. The screen allowed her to observe without being seen, to witness without participating. A silent spectator to whatever horror was about to unfold. Witness. As if I'm not dying inside. The silver chains around Rhys's wrists gleamed in the torchlight. Not ordinary restraints, these were forged specifically to suppress a wolf's ability to shift, inscribed with runes that burned against supernatural flesh. She could see the raw, blistered skin where the metal touched him, could smell the scorched hair and blood even from her hidden vantage point. Her wolf clawed at her insides, desperate to reach him. The bond pulled taut as a bowstring, screaming that her mate was hurt, was in danger, was right there, and she was doing nothing. Selina pressed her palm flat against the screen until splinters bit into her skin. The pain helped. Barely. Rhys moved with controlled grace despite the chains, despite the obvious beating he'd taken since they captured him. His lip was split, one eye swollen nearly shut, and he held his left side like his ribs were broken. But his spine stayed straight, his chin lifted in defiance that made her heart twist painfully in her chest. The council sat in a semicircle of judgment, 12 elders, faces carved from disapproval and ancient law. And at the center, elevated on the dais that should have been hers, sat Alpha King Hadrian. Her mate. Her husband. The man whose hand she'd been holding when her entire world imploded. He looked every inch the king tonight. Crown gleaming, formal robes immaculate, expression coldly neutral. Only his hands gave him away, gripped white-knuckled on the throne's armrests. State your name, Elder Mara commanded. Rhys lifted his head. Rhys Thorn. A murmur rippled through the council. Selina frowned. That surname, Thorn, why did it sound familiar? And your pack? Mara pressed. I have no pack. Rhys's voice carried clearly through the chamber, rough with pain but steady. Not anymore. Because you're a rogue? Hadrian leaned forward, and something in his tone made Selina's wolf bristle. Or because your pack no longer exists. Rhys's eyes flashed and Selina's breath caught. Silver. Not the gold of normal wolf eyes, not even the amber that marked particularly powerful bloodlines. Pure silver, bright as moonlight on water, ancient and otherworldly and wrong according to every text she'd ever studied. The council chamber erupted. Impossible. The lost bloodline. They're all dead, this must be some trick. Silence. Hadrian's command cracked through the chaos like a whip. The council subsided into shocked whispers, but the damage was done. Selina could see it on their faces, recognition, fear, and something that looked uncomfortably like guilt. The lost bloodline. The words echoed in her mind, pulling up half-remembered lessons from her childhood tutors. A wolf clan that supposedly went extinct centuries ago, before even her great-grandfather's time. The histories barely mention them, just vague references to a broken bloodline and necessary measures during wartime. She'd always assumed they died in one of the territorial conflicts. Natural selection. The way of wolves. Looking at the faces around her now, Selina realized how naive that assumption had been. You stand accused, Hadrian continued, his voice taking on the formal cadence of judgment, of using forbidden blood magic to manipulate our queen's wolf. Of forcing a false mate bond through supernatural coercion. I used no magic. Rhys spoke quietly, but his words carried weight. Truth. The moon goddess doesn't ask permission when she chooses. The moon goddess already chose. Hadrian stood, descending from the dais with measured steps. He moved like a predator circling wounded prey. Our queen bonded with me. The ceremony was witnessed by 4 packs. Your interference. I didn't interfere. Rhys turned his head, tracking Hadrian's movement with those unsettling silver eyes. I came to stop a wedding that should never have happened. To warn her before she bound herself to a throne built on murder. The word dropped into the chamber like a stone into still water. Hadrian stopped walking. Careful, Elder Mara said softly. Accusations against the crown are treason. Then I'll die a traitor. Blood trickled from the corner of Rhys's mouth, but he smiled, sharp and bitter and utterly without fear. But she deserves to know the truth before you kill me. Behind her screen, Selina's fingers curled into fists. Tell me. The lost bloodline didn't die out, Rhys said, his voice gaining strength. We were slaughtered. Hunted down systematically over 3 years. Men, women, children, elders who couldn't even shift anymore. The Alpha King's grandfather orchestrated it. Called us abominations because our eyes ran silver instead of gold, because our wolves answered to the moon before we answered to any king. Lies, Hadrian said, but his voice sounded strange. Hollow. I was 12 when they came for my family. Rhys's chains rattled as he shifted his weight, pain flickering across his face. I watched my father die protecting my younger sister. She was 7. She didn't even know what we were yet, hadn't had her first shift. They killed her anyway. Selina's stomach turned. The bond between them pulsed with his anguish, not just memory, but fresh grief, still bleeding after all these years. I escaped because my mother used the last of her strength to hide me in a cellar. I heard her screams for hours. His silver eyes found Hadrian's face. Your father led that raid, didn't he? The silence stretched taut enough to snap. The council declared your bloodline corrupted, Hadrian said finally. A threat to pack stability. My family did what was necessary to protect. You call murdering children necessary? I call eliminating a bloodline that could challenge the throne strategic. Hadrian's mask cracked, showing something cold and calculating underneath. Your kind were too powerful, too unpredictable. One silver-eyed wolf could command loyalty that took my ancestors generations to build. So yes, they made a choice. Horror crawled up Selina's spine. This couldn't be true. The man she'd agreed to marry, the king she'd sworn to rule beside, he was defending genocide with the casual logic of a chess player sacrificing pawns. I came here to stop you, Rhys said, and now he was looking past Hadrian, toward the screen where he somehow knew she was hidden. I didn't come for you, Selina. I came because I'd heard whispers that our queen was being groomed by the same family that destroyed mine. That you were kind and just and had no idea the throne you were climbing onto was built from our bones. The bond flared between them, not just physical pull, but understanding. He'd crashed her wedding not to claim her, but to save her. But the moon chose you anyway, he'd said. And it had. Despite his plans, despite his revenge, despite everything. The goddess had looked at both of them and decided they belonged together. Selina's eyes found Cairo, standing rigid near the council's edge. Her brother-in-law had been silent throughout the entire proceeding, but now she saw what she'd missed before, the terror in his face. The guilt. He knew. He'd always known. Your Majesty. Elder Mara's voice cut through Selina's spiraling thoughts. The council has heard enough. We recommend execution. Hadrian turned back to face Rhys, and his expression was carved from ice. At sunrise. For treason, for attempted magical coercion of the crown, and for crimes against the kingdom. No. The word tore from Selina's throat before she could stop it. Every head in the chamber turned toward the screen. Your Majesty, Mara hissed, you cannot. But Selina was already moving, stepping out from behind the screen into the full view of the council. Into Hadrian's shocked gaze. Into Rhys's silver eyes, which softened with something that looked like relief and resignation all at once. You will not execute him, she said. Hadrian's jaw tightened. Selina, my queen, return to your chambers. You're not well. I'm perfectly well. She descended the gallery steps, each footfall echoing through the silent chamber. And I'm telling you that you will not kill this man. He's a threat to the crown. He's my mate. The words hung in the air, undeniable and devastating. Hadrian stared at her, and she watched her husband's face cycle through shock, fury, and finally, worst of all, cold calculation. Then you leave me no choice. He turned to the guards. Take him to the execution grounds. We'll deal with this at first light. Hadrian. Enough. His voice boomed through the chamber, and for the first time, Selina saw the king her tutors had warned her about, the one who ruled through fear rather than respect. You will return to your chambers. You will not interfere. And at sunrise, this matter will be settled. Permanently. The guards closed around Rhys, dragging him toward the chamber doors. He didn't fight, but his eyes never left hers, trying to tell her something, trying to prepare her for what came next. The doors slammed shut behind them. And Selina stood alone in a council chamber full of people who'd just revealed themselves to be either murderers or accomplices, staring at the throne she'd thought she wanted, finally understanding the price that had been paid for her crown. Sunrise was 4 hours away. The lock clicked into place with a finality that made Selina's bones ache. She threw herself against the chamber door anyway, knowing it was useless, needing to do something besides stand still while they prepared to murder her mate. The heavy oak didn't budge. Outside, she heard the guards shift their weight, weapons clinking softly. Please. Her voice cracked. She hated the sound of it, desperate, broken, so unlike a queen. Please, just let me speak with him. 5 minutes. I won't. Direct orders from the Alpha King, Your Majesty. The guard's voice filtered through the door, not unkind but immovable. No one enters or leaves until dawn. Dawn. When they would execute Rhys in the courtyard while she watched helplessly from her window, like some tragic figure in a children's tale. Selina pressed her forehead against the door, fighting the sob building in her chest. The bond stretched between her and Rhys like a living thing, pulled taut with distance and fear. She could feel him. Still alive, still conscious, still there, but she couldn't reach him. And underneath that pull, the other bond writhed. The one with Hadrian, the one she'd agreed to, the one that now felt like a shackle slowly tightening around her throat. Footsteps approached from inside the chamber. Selina spun, hope flaring briefly before she recognized Elder Mara's silhouette. How did you? There's a servant's passage. Mara moved into the candlelight and Selina saw she wasn't alone. 3 other elders flanked her, faces grave. We need to talk, Your Majesty. If you're here to convince me to let him die, we're here, Mara interrupted, to give you a choice. Though I suspect you'll find it no choice at all. The eldest stepped forward, Elder Theron, whose family had served the crown for 6 generations. His voice carried the weight of those years. The Alpha King has sent word to the border packs. If you refuse to complete the bonding ceremony with him, he will consider it an act of treason. He will call them to war. Selina's breath caught. War? Against whom? Against anyone who questions his claim to you. Theron's eyes were sad but resigned. He's framing your complication as an attack on the crown itself. A challenge to royal authority. The border packs are already unstable. There's been unrest for months. This could light a powder keg that burns through 4 territories. He's bluffing. He's a king who just had his wedding interrupted and his queen claimed by another. Mara's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Men have started wars for less. So what? Selina's hands shook. I complete the bond with Hadrian and let him execute Rhys? That's the choice? My mate's life or thousands of innocents? The elders exchanged glances. None of them answered. The kingdom will burn if you deny him, Theron said quietly. We've seen the messages. The troop movements. He's serious, Selina. If you don't stand beside him at dawn, if you don't complete the ceremony and prove your loyalty to the crown, he will paint you as a traitor and Rhys as an enemy combatant. The packs will have to choose sides. And they'll choose the king. Elder Mara's expression was carved from sorrow. They always do. Selina turned away, moving to the window. Below, in the courtyard, workers were already constructing the platform. The execution scaffolding rose like bones against the pre-dawn darkness, and she could see figures moving around it, guards, witnesses, the machinery of state-sanctioned murder grinding into motion. Her wolf snarled inside her chest, throwing itself against her ribs like a caged animal. The sensation was wrong, all wrong. Wolves weren't meant to fight their human halves like this. They were supposed to be one entity, 2 parts of the same soul. But her wolf didn't want Hadrian. It wanted the man currently chained in the dungeons below, probably bleeding and broken and waiting for an execution he'd known was coming the moment he crashed through those ceremony doors. I came to warn you, he'd said. And now he would die for it. What if I refuse anyway? Selina asked. What if I choose him over the crown? The silence behind her spoke volumes. Then you're not the queen we thought you were, Mara said finally. And we'll have failed everyone who trusted us to guide you. The words landed like physical blows. Selina closed her eyes, feeling the impossible weight of crowns and kingdoms and choices that weren't really choices at all. The ceremony begins in 2 hours, Theron said. The Alpha King has requested your presence in the main hall. The bonding ritual will be accelerated, given the circumstances. Forced, you mean? No one contradicted her. After the elders left, Selina stood at the window and watched the sky lighten by degrees. Dawn approached with cruel inevitability, and with it, the end of everything. Her wolf began to keen a high, desperate sound that belonged to dying things. They came for her as the first rays of sunlight broke over the eastern wall. Handmaidens dressed her in ceremonial white, their hands gentle but their faces closed. No one met her eyes. No one spoke except to murmur instructions. Lift your arms, turn around, hold still. The gown was beautiful. Selina hated it. When they led her into the main hall, she found it transformed overnight. Where yesterday there had been celebration, now there was only grim formality. The guests were gone, replaced by council members and high-ranking pack officials whose presence served as both witness and warning. Hadrian waited at the altar, resplendent in royal regalia. He looked like every inch a king, powerful, commanding, utterly certain of his right to stand there and claim her. Her wolf recoiled so violently that Selina stumbled. Pain lanced through her chest, not emotional anguish, but physical agony, like something vital was tearing inside her. She gasped, one hand flying to her ribs, and felt the bond with Hadrian pulling in the opposite direction from her wolf's desperate need. Steady. Elder Mara materialized at her elbow, grip firm. You can do this. I can't, but Selina's feet kept moving, carrying her down the aisle toward a future that felt like drowning. Hadrian's expression softened when she reached him. He took her hands, and she felt nothing. Worse than nothing revulsion, her wolf's claws scraping at her insides, trying to make her run. I know this isn't what you wanted, Hadrian said quietly, too low for the council to hear. But it's what we need. For the kingdom. You understand that, don't you? Before she could answer, horns blared from the courtyard. The execution was beginning. Selina's head snapped toward the sound, and she felt it. Rhys, being dragged up onto the platform, silver chains burning his skin, guards flanking him with weapons drawn. No! The word ripped from her throat. Selina. Hadrian's grip on her hands tightened. Don't. He's going to die. He was always going to die. Hadrian's voice turned cold. The moment he walked into our ceremony, his fate was sealed. You can't save him. But you can save everyone else. The horns blared again. Through the hall's high windows, she could hear the crowd gathering, the murmur of voices, the creak of rope being tested. Begin the ritual, Hadrian commanded. Elder Theron stepped forward, ancient tome open in his hands, and began to chant the bonding words. The same words from yesterday, but this time they felt like shackles clicking into place. Selina's wolf thrashed. Pain exploded through her body. Her bones feeling like they were breaking, her skin too tight, everything wrong, wrong, wrong. I can't, she gasped. Hadrian, please, I can't. You will. His hands moved to her shoulders, holding her in place. For the kingdom. Say the words, Selina. The chanting grew louder. Power began to build in the air, the forced bonding magic responding to the ritual even though her wolf fought every syllable. Another horn blast. Closer now. The executioner must be raising the blade. Rhys. His name tore from her lungs like a prayer, like a curse, like the only truth she had left. And her wolf surged. Not gently. Not controllably. With the fury of a goddess denied, with power that had been building behind a dam finally breaking free. The ceremonial chains binding her wrists, purely symbolic, meant to represent the joining of two souls, snapped. Metal links exploded outward, ringing against marble floors, and Selina felt her bones begin to shift. No! Hadrian grabbed for her, but she was already moving, already breaking free from his grip with strength that shouldn't have been possible. She ran. Guards shouted. Elder Mara screamed something about containment. But Selina was faster, her wolf lending her speed as she crashed through the hall's doors and into the courtyard where Rhys stood on the platform, head bowed, silver eyes catching the sunrise as the executioner raised his blade. Stop. Selina's voice carried across the courtyard with supernatural force, and she felt it, her power, the authority of a true alpha queen, finally unleashed. Every head turned. The executioner froze mid-swing. Rhys's eyes found hers across the distance, and the bond between them blazed so bright it hurt. Behind her, Hadrian emerged from the hall, flanked by guards. Seize her. They tried. 6 guards converged on Selina, hands reaching to restrain her, to drag her back inside, to force her to complete what she'd started. Her wolf refused. Power exploded outward from her center, raw, divine, absolutely uncontrolled. The guards flew backwards. The courtyard stones cracked. And Selina felt her body beginning to give way under the pressure of containing 2 mate bonds, 2 opposing forces, 2 impossible truths trying to exist in the same space. She collapsed to her knees, vision blurring. But this time it wasn't weakness that brought her down. It was the weight of finally choosing herself. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Rhys breaking free from his chains, silver eyes blazing with a power that matched her own, running toward her as the entire courtyard erupted into chaos. Selina's body hit the courtyard stones hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Pain radiated through her spine, her shoulders, her skull where it cracked against the ground. But underneath the physical agony, something else was happening, something that felt like her very soul was being torn in 2 directions at once. The world spun. Voices shouted from what seemed like miles away. She tried to focus, tried to push herself up, but her arms wouldn't obey. This is it, she thought distantly. This is how I die. Not in battle. Not protecting my people. But torn apart by my own heart. Asterisk. Then the moonlight hit her. It shouldn't have been possible. Dawn had broken minutes ago. She'd seen the sunrise herself, watched it illuminate Reese's silver eyes on the execution platform. The sun ruled the sky now. But moonlight poured down through the morning brightness anyway, a column of pure silver radiance that defied every natural law. It struck Selina directly, wrapping around her prone form like a lover's embrace. The courtyard went silent. Selina felt the light sink into her skin, not burning but awakening. Her wolf stopped thrashing. The twin bonds stopped tearing. And for the first time since Reese had crashed through those ceremony doors, she could breathe. Power flooded through her veins, ancient, divine, unmistakable. Not the political authority granted by crowns and councils, but something older. Something that predated kingdoms entirely. Moonblessed monarch. Elder Mara's voice cracked on the words, disbelief and awe warring in her tone. By the goddess herself. Selina's eyes opened. The world looked different through the moonlight, sharper, clearer, like a veil had been lifted. She could see the silver threads connecting her to Reese, blazing with divine approval. And she could see the frayed, struggling bond with Hadrian, forced, political, wrong from its very inception. The goddess had spoken. Finally, definitively, in a way no one could deny. She pushed herself to her knees, then to her feet. The moonlight moved with her, a visible mark of favor that made several council members drop to their knees in automatic reverence. "This is impossible," Hadrian said, but his voice shook. "Moonblessed monarchs are legend. They haven't existed for 500 years." Elder Theron's weathered face had gone pale. Not since Queen Astrid the Just, who united the warring packs. He turned to Selina, and she saw something like fear in his eyes. "Your Majesty, do you understand what this means? Tell me." Selina's voice emerged stronger than she expected, resonant with power that wasn't entirely her own. Mara stepped forward, her earlier resignation replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like religious fervor. A moonblessed monarch cannot be forced into any bond, cannot be compelled by law or tradition or threat. Their mate choice is divine mandate. To interfere is to defy the goddess herself. The implications crashed through Selina's mind. She couldn't be forced to complete the ceremony with Hadrian. Couldn't be pressured by threats of war or duty or the good of the kingdom. The goddess had chosen for her, had marked her as belonging to someone else entirely. "She's meant to choose a mate aligned with destiny," Theron continued, his voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting sacred text. "Not politics. Not alliance. Not convenience. The moonblessed choose their mates with divine guidance, and their children carry the favor of the goddess herself." On the execution platform, Reese stirred. Despite his chains, despite the executioner's blade still hovering nearby, despite everything, he was smiling. Not triumphant. Understanding. "Selina." His voice carried across the courtyard, rough with pain, but steady with conviction. "You weren't chosen by the kingdom, you were chosen to change it." The words struck her like lightning. All those years of training to be the perfect queen, learning to put duty before desire, kingdom before self. She'd thought that was what being a good ruler meant. But what if she'd been preparing for the wrong role entirely? What if she wasn't meant to maintain the status quo, but to shatter it? "This changes nothing." Hadrian's voice cut through her revelation, sharp with desperation. "Moonblessed or not, she took vows. She agreed to bond with me. The kingdom needs." "The kingdom," Selina interrupted, turning to face her almost husband, "was built on genocide." She gestured to Reese. "His people were slaughtered because they threatened your family's power. How many others have you erased from history? How many bloodlines ended because they dared to be different?" Hadrian's face went carefully blank. "Those were necessary measures in a time of war?" "There was no war. There was only systematic murder." The moonlight pulsed around her, responding to her anger. "You call it strategy. I call it evil. You're overwrought." Hadrian descended from the hall steps, moving toward her with calculated calm. "The revelation has clearly affected your judgment. Once you've had time to process, I'm perfectly clear." Selina held her ground as he approached. "And I'm telling you that I will not bond with a man who defends butchering children." Hadrian stopped 3 feet away. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes, the mask of the benevolent king finally cracking to reveal what lay beneath. Very well. His voice dropped to ice. If you won't come willingly. He turned to face the guards surrounding the execution platform. Kill him. Now. Sever the bond permanently. Time seemed to slow. Selina saw the guards move toward Rhys, saw the executioner raise his blade with renewed purpose, saw Rhys's silver eyes widen. Not with fear for himself, but with anguish for her, for what killing him would do to her soul. And her wolf erupted. Not a surge this time. Not a warning. A full transformation that she couldn't have stopped if she'd wanted to, bones cracking, skin splitting, her human form shedding like a cocoon to reveal what lay beneath. Except she was still halfway human when the chaos started. Stuck between forms in a way that should have been agonizing, but felt like freedom, her wolf's power combining with her human intelligence in a fusion that made her more dangerous than either form alone. She moved before conscious thought, crossing the courtyard in 3 impossible bounds. Guards tried to intercept her 5, then 8, then 12, but she was faster, stronger, blessed by divine favor that made her untouchable. The executioner's blade descended toward Rhys's neck. Selina's claws caught it mid-swing. Metal screamed. The blade shattered, fragments scattering across the platform like deadly rain. Touch him, she snarled through a mouth that was neither fully human nor fully wolf, and I will tear this kingdom apart with my bare hands. The executioner stumbled backward. The guards froze, uncertain whether to attack their own queen, especially one currently glowing with moonlight and radiating enough power to make the air crackle. Hadrian's voice rose above the confusion. She's gone feral. Contain her before. But Selina wasn't listening. She was already moving toward Rhys, her partially shifted form awkward but effective as she reached his side. His silver chains glowed hot where they touched his skin, burning through flesh to suppress his wolf. She grabbed the chains with both hands, her own skin blistering instantly from the silver contact, and pulled. The chains held. Reinforced, blessed, designed to contain even the strongest wolf. But they weren't designed to contain a moon-blessed monarch. Selina felt the goddess's power surge through her arms, saw the moonlight wrap around the chains like living vines. The metal began to glow, first red, then white-hot, then something beyond heat entirely. Selina, Rhys's voice held warning. Your hands. I don't care. She pulled harder, feeling the chains resist, feeling her own flesh burning away, feeling everything narrow down to this single moment, this impossible choice. I won't leave you. The chains screamed. And then they snapped. The explosion of released magic threw everyone backward, guards, council members, even Hadrian himself went flying. The execution platform splintered. The courtyard stones cracked in a spiderweb pattern that spread from where Selina stood. Rhys collapsed forward, and she caught him, her body sliding back toward human as exhaustion finally caught up with her. Her hands were ruined, skin hanging in strips where the silver had burned through, but she held him anyway. His silver eyes met hers, full of pain and relief and something that looked like worship. You came for me, he whispered. Always. Selina's vision blurred from blood loss or tears, she couldn't tell. I'm sorry it took so long. Around them, the courtyard descended into chaos. Guards shouting conflicting orders, council members arguing about protocol, Hadrian screaming for order that no one was listening to anymore. And above them all, the impossible moonlight continued to shine, a declaration from the goddess herself that some bonds were too sacred to break, even if they tore kingdoms apart in the process. Selina's ruined hands left blood trails on the trees as she hauled Rhys deeper into the forest. Behind them, horns blared, the hunting call, a sound that made her wolf's hackles rise with primal fear. They were prey now. Leave me. Rhys's voice rasped against her shoulder, his weight growing heavier with each step. You can still go back. Tell them I forced you. Shut up. Selina adjusted her grip, ignoring the way her burned palms screamed in protest. Save your breath for running. But he was barely conscious, his body failing after days of torture and silver poisoning. The broken ribs she'd noticed in the council chamber were worse than she'd thought. She could feel the unnatural give in his torso, could hear the wet rattle in his breathing that meant internal bleeding. He wouldn't make it much farther. The bond between them pulsed with each labored step, and something strange was happening. Instead of weakening with his injuries, it was growing stronger. She could feel his pain as clearly as her own, could sense his determination not to slow her down, could taste his fear, not for himself, but for what would happen to her if they were caught. And underneath it all, a wellspring of power building between them like a gathering storm. "Your Majesty." The shout came from too close behind. "Surrender, and the Alpha King promises mercy." Selina's laugh emerged bitter and sharp. "His mercy looks like execution scaffolds." She pushed forward, half dragging Rhys around a massive oak. The forest was old here, the trees thick enough that 3 men couldn't wrap their arms around the trunks. This was the outer edge of what locals called the Forbidden Forest, a place where pack members didn't venture, where the old magic still ran wild and dangerous, where only the desperate or the damned would flee. Rhys's legs gave out. He collapsed against a tree trunk, silver eyes glazed with pain. Blood stained his shirt from wounds that weren't healing the way they should. "Go." He pushed weakly at her hands. "Selina, please. You're moon-blessed. They won't really hurt you. You can still." "If you tell me to go back one more time," Selina said, crouching beside him, "I will personally finish what that executioner started." Despite everything, he smiled. Terrifying and beautiful. The moon goddess chose well. The bond flared between them, not painful now, but warm. Strengthening. She felt his wolf rising to meet hers, felt their power beginning to intertwine in ways that shouldn't be possible without a completed bonding ceremony. Torchlight flickered between the trees. The guards were getting closer. Selina's body responded before her mind could catch up. Bones began to crack, muscles reshaping, her form sliding into that halfway state, more than human, not quite wolf. Stronger than either alone. She positioned herself between Rhys and the approaching torches, teeth bared, claws extended. If they wanted him, they'd have to go through her first. The guards emerged from the shadows, 12 of them, weapons drawn but expressions uncertain. They'd never faced their own queen in combat before. Didn't know if they were even allowed to raise arms against her. "Stand down, Your Majesty." Captain Aldrich stepped forward, his weathered face pained. "Please. The Alpha King has guaranteed your safety if you return peacefully. And him." Selina gestured toward Rhys without taking her eyes off the guards. Aldrich's silence was answer enough. "Then we have nothing to discuss. You're making this harder than it needs to be." A new voice cut through the forest, cold, commanding, utterly without mercy. The guards parted and Hadrian emerged. He changed from his ceremonial robes into hunting leathers, practical and fitted, a king who'd decided to do his own dirty work. The crown still sat on his head, incongruous against the wilderness backdrop, a reminder that even here, in the wild places, he considered himself ruler of all he surveyed. His eyes found Selina's partially shifted form, and something flickered across his face. Disgust? Fear? She couldn't tell anymore, wasn't sure she cared. "Dramatic as always," Hadrian said, moving closer with the casual confidence of someone who'd never truly been threatened. "Though I have to admit, I didn't think you'd actually run. I thought we'd raised you better than that. You raised me to be obedient." Selina's voice emerged distorted through her half-shifted jaw. "Not loyal. There's a difference. Semantics." He waved a hand dismissively. "Come back to the palace. We'll tell everyone this was temporary insanity. Moonblessed revelation can be overwhelming. The council will understand. And Rhys." Hadrian's expression hardened. "Dies. Obviously. That hasn't changed." Behind her, Rhys stirred, trying to rise. Selina pushed him back down with one clawed hand, keeping herself between him and Hadrian. "Then I'm not coming back." "Selina." Hadrian's voice dropped to something approximating patience, though she could hear the fury simmering underneath. "Be reasonable. You're a queen. You have responsibilities. People depending on you. You can't just abandon everything for, he gestured at Rhys with contempt. For him. Watch me. If you leave with him, it's treason. The mask finally dropped completely. Hadrian's face twisted into something ugly, something that had probably always been there beneath the royal polish. I will hunt you both. I will declare you enemies of the state. Every pack in 4 territories will know that you chose a silver-eyed abomination over your own people. My own people, Selina said softly, dangerously, include the children your family slaughtered. The bloodlines your ancestors erased. The wolves who were murdered for being different. She took a step forward, and Hadrian actually flinched. I'm done pretending your crown is clean. Last chance. Hadrian's hand moved to his belt, where a silver dagger hung. Executive privilege, the blade that could kill any wolf, even an alpha. Come back, or watch him die. I'll do it myself this time. Make it slow. The threat hung in the air like poison. Selina felt Rhys's hand on her ankle, weak, trembling, trying to pull her away, trying even now to sacrifice himself for her safety. And she felt the bond between them sing with certainty. She straightened, letting her form slide fully back to human. Met Hadrian's eyes with perfect clarity and absolute conviction. I choose my true mate. The words fell like hammer strikes. Final. Irreversible. The forest went silent. Then the earth trembled. Not an earthquake, something more deliberate. The ground shook with divine intention, with power that made every wolf present drop to their knees in automatic submission. Every wolf except Selina and Rhys. Moonlight exploded through the canopy, impossible and brilliant, bathing them both in silver radiance. Selina felt heat bloom across her collarbone, not painful, but intense, like being branded from the inside out. She looked down and saw it forming, a silver sigil, intricate and ancient, marking her as chosen. Behind her, Rhys gasped. She turned to see the same mark appearing on his chest, directly over his heart. Their eyes met, and the bond between them completed. Not through ritual or ceremony, but through the moon goddess's direct intervention. Divine approval, undeniable and absolute. No. Hadrian stumbled backward, the silver dagger falling from his nerveless fingers. No, this isn't, you can't. But the goddess had spoken. And even kings couldn't argue with divine mandate. Selina felt Rhys's strength flooding back through their completed bond, felt her own injuries beginning to heal with supernatural speed. They rose together, moving in perfect synchronization, 2 halves of a whole finally joined. This isn't over, Hadrian said, but his voice shook. He was looking at them like they were something dangerous, something that could destroy everything he'd built. I'll call every pack. I'll declare war if I have to. You won't survive what's coming. Maybe not. Selina reached down, helping Rhys to his feet. Their matching sigils glowed softly in the moonlight. But we'll die free. She turned away from her almost husband, from the crown she'd spent her whole life preparing to wear, from the kingdom that had been built on bones and lies. Turned toward the deeper forest, toward the forbidden places where pack law didn't reach. Your Majesty. Captain Aldrich's voice cracked. Please, the forbidden forest will kill you. No one who enters that deep survives. Selina looked back over her shoulder, meeting his eyes. No one who enters alone survives. That's what the stories say. She felt Rhys's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining despite her burned palms. But we're not alone. They walked into the shadows together, leaving the torchlight and the hunting party behind. The forest seemed to welcome them, branches parting, underbrush clearing, as if the wilderness itself recognized what they were. Moon-blessed. Mate-bonded. Chosen by forces older than kingdoms. Behind them, Hadrian's voice rose in a howl of rage that promised retribution. Promised war. Promised that this was only the beginning. But ahead of them, the forbidden forest waited, dangerous and wild and utterly unconcerned with the politics of wolves who thought they ruled the world. Rhys stumbled, and Selina caught him, their bond allowing her to share her strength with him, to keep him upright when his body wanted to fail. You know, he said, voice rough, but tinged with something that might have been hope, the stories also say the forbidden forest drives you mad. Makes you see things that aren't there. Turns mates against each other. Good thing we're already half mad then. Selina adjusted her grip, pulling him deeper into the shadows. We'll fit right in. Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the army that would soon be hunting them, Reese laughed. The sound echoed through the ancient trees, defiant and wild and utterly unafraid. They walked until the moonlight faded, until the sounds of pursuit grew distant, until there was nothing but the two of them and the dark heart of a forest that had been waiting centuries for something exactly like them. Selina's fingers brushed the silver sigil on her collarbone, still warm, still glowing faintly in the darkness. If destiny brought us together, she whispered, more to herself than to him, it won't let us die. Reese's silver eyes found hers in the gloom. And if it does? She smiled, sharp and fierce and free for the first time in her life. Then at least we'll die as we were meant to together. They vanished into the forbidden forest, two matched souls marked by the moon, leaving behind a kingdom on the brink of war and a rejected king who would never forgive them. The trees closed behind them like a door shutting. And deep in the shadows, something ancient stirred, watching, waiting, recognizing what had entered its domain. The real story, it seemed, was only just beginning.